It's a need for coaching, need for planning. I call it altitude syndrome. I'm always struggling with athletes and coaches who always want to go to altitude. They want to get the icing on the cake, but they're not doing the basics. Eat, drink, sleep properly. You know, do the basics first before trying to get that final edge. Short circuit it. I've had a lad that said he was going to smash my British record and all this. Yeah. Okay, but hey, it's still standing. So there's a lot of talk is cheap. Another story. Nick Simmons, Haywood Field. I've just spent 14, 15 years in America. The magical Haywood Field got rammed down my throat all the time. This isn't being recorded too much, are they? Always run well. You look at the Oregon kids, always run well. No one could beat us there. And Nick was the same. My coach, Nick Simmons. So it was like, yeah, I'm invincible. No one can touch me there. I wish everything was there. But they don't forget to realise that it's Prefontaine's at the beginning of the year. Everybody's got a trainer. It's a pain in the arse to get to. So it's like the people are either fatigued, there's allergies, there's all other sorts of stuff there. I think my point of that is that if David Rhodesia turned up, then you know some of the world-class athletes, then they're going to be tough to beat. It's just if you're organised and you do your planning and you do your preparation right, then and you can achieve optimal performance. So it doesn't need to be on your back door. 9 to 5 mentality, it's not what we do as coaches a lot of the time anyway. It's time to commit, focus and absorb. You've got to match the athlete's ambitions. You know, if they want to go somewhere and they've got the talent to, are you equal? We've got to be technically above them, hopefully. That does become a little bit more even keel as they go further up the rung of the ladder. But do you have the time to take them to the next level? You've got to match their aspirations. And nice. Canadian, I was told everybody in Canada is nice. And they are, very nice. But it's nice to be nice. The problem with that, you need conflict. And you need inconveniences. You need to put people into difficult situations and challenge them. It's uncomfortable being world class, being at the top. It's not easy. And if you're not prepared and not pushing those kind of buttons on a daily basis, it's going to be difficult for you to achieve success. However, I think the thing is you get a lot of demonstrating from coaches along the way. I'm not saying that by any stretch. Yeah, I'm pretty tough and ruthless and I'm hard to please, or I'm not forward too much at congratulating people, but it's important to be constructive and be able to explain what it is that you do so that then they can buy into it. This one is for Heather though, this is knowledge. I'm a painter and decorator, just making my way before the Olympics. I don't know whether I've come up with a new term, but I don't know whether you guys know what veneering is. Painting it's a surface. It's what I call, for me, veneer coaching. It's theoretical coaches. It's academics and intellects. Obviously, you could tell that I'm going to resist those guys because I'm from a different background. But that can't be done in a classroom. But veneer is a superficial, deceptively nice, shiny surface on top, but underneath it's a cheaper version. I get a little bit of that when I hear a lot of coaching. My very first coaching conference was in Belfast for World Cross. I just couldn't believe how articulate and fantastic everybody spoke. And the reality was, well, who have they coached? You know, what have they converted the theory into practice? A lot of them have done, and that's not to say that they don't exist, they do, but I'm just saying, you've always got to be weary of the pretty colours, the pretty graphs, the colouring, and just the nice written plans. That's nice, and there's a purpose to it, but you've got to get your hands dirty in this trade. And money. Everybody talks about money. It's always used as an excuse. It's not the given. It's the same as Premier League. Self and Felix have a banter quite a bit for our different teams, just to help him and appease him. Premier League, teams with lots of money, money can't buy success. I support Man United. And look at my wisdom. Thank you for your cheering, but they're not going. Yeah, all right. But the point is with them, and the same with the New York Yankees, and I don't think they may play it. So you can have all the money in the world, but it doesn't necessarily correlate to performance and how it spins out. However, it is an important factor, money, but as probably on some more of the slides later, it's the money can be better invested when you need it to enable you to have the correct support systems in play, because it does get expensive. So you can buy expertise. Right, okay, good to obvious one, attitude, thirst for learning, having curiosity. Need to have an obsessive drive and to be the best and to maintain it. But you've got to be accountable, you've got to look in the mirror. There's responsibilities to live by and responsibilities to live up to. You've got to work like a number two. And it's a very American system. It's like, got to be the best. There was a lovely HBO series, I don't know whether anybody's watched the Dynasty. There was, I think it's the rise of the LA Lakers dynasty. There's a good comment again, and I'm just going to quote this, but it's like, you can put together a great team, a squad of great players, and then they come and go. But deep down, we know what we have to do here is bigger than any of them. We need to create a culture, build it bigger than any of the individuals. And I think both of the guys have spoken about the cultures that they've got in each of their colleges. You've got to create that. You've got to put your hook on it. Of this is what you stand for. But the point of that is that Dr. Buss of the LAs was trying to desperately knock down the top of the tree. It's easier getting there. It's harder staying there. And the Celtics at that particular time would consistently been doing it for years on end. So yeah. I think, like I said, it's easy to get to the top, but staying there is a lot tougher. Lifestyle. Focus on the 2 hours we don't see them rather than the 22. Oh, sorry, the other way around. Focus on the 22 hours that you don't see them rather than the 2 hours that you do. And that's really, you know, a lot of people, we like to say it, and we talk about recovery, we talk about regeneration. A lot of people talk about it. But are they doing it, and do they do it properly? Are they actually doing what's necessary? You've got to, it's every session. Every session has to have a purpose, and it needs to be, and every session is a quality session. They're gap sessions. Easy running, knowing what the intensities need to be at. And I used to use this with one of my guys that was coming up. Just because you have the ability to run quick, to do it, doesn't mean to say that you have to. Just because you can run 450 miles, but you can run 5-minute miles to get the same effect out of the session. Spoken about, and we'll probably go into that, about lactate responses. Those are the kind of things that clearly you want consistent, or you want to continually get more and more in. So what you do on a day-by-day basis is vital, and even more so at the top level. It's no stone unturned. I think Resnate already kind of stolen that one in some ways, and I think it epitomises everything that an elite athlete should be. Everyday pressures. Live in a sea of adrenaline, being uncomfortable. It's got inconveniences. You've got to challenge them. It's easy to do. It's always nice to be not, do the wonderful sessions, and you do need to have that conversation with the athletes, because a lot of the time if they like it, then there might be more effect from it. But you need to put them in places of inconvenience. I think you go to major championships, there's a lot of boredom, and I think we were in a thing about a diver, is that a lot of people train and they do this. So it's about diving, and everybody, the Chinese or whatever it was, were doing a lot of jumps or whatever, dives into the pool continuously within an hour. But when you got to the major championships, you might only have one jump in 1 hour spell. So you need to prepare for the eventualities. And I think the classic words have just come out again: expect the unexpected, don't assume anything. There's a lot of pressures that you need to go under, and a lot of them are built in within the 4 inches between one ear and the other. First class support team, yeah, I've spoken about that. There's a lot, it's got to be coach-led, there's too many egos with teams. That sums everything for me, is you've got to create a team. We live in a hub, we live in a high performance centre, there's a lot of people, a lot of noise, a lot of voices. And it's just, but I'm not everybody's cup of tea as a coach. I'm not the same, we fit different people in a different way. It's the same with support services, so they need to be comfortable and create a team for them. It's about the athlete. I'd say everybody uses those lovely terms, athlete centred, you know, coach driven, and that is the case, but it's defining and trying to get the right people into play. Accessibility, don't waste time on product lusts. Move to a high performance centre was what we were told in the UK, so you can have everything under one umbrella. It takes energy running around searching for people, and when we get to the higher level, it's energy, you know. And so what are we doing? We want to recover more. We want to recover well. We need to look at the ceilings and not be able to do anything. Just switch off. So it's accessibility, easy access. Can have a fascination for the process of preparation, and I'll probably talk a bit more about preparation. That's the same with everyone's, but it's long term. You know, it's consistently breeds confidence. It's creating the team, whether it be the medical team, and try and get people into place so it's a little bit more long. Unfortunately, I've always been, well, not in the UK, but the last 14, 15 years in the US, everything's a quick fix society. So it's like you've got to hit the ground running, and they want their performance. Luckily, the main guys at Nike that I was working for kind of understood the first year that, well, maybe I won't get the results because I was putting some foundation down. And then it was the second year, then maybe they'll see some improvement. And you don't normally get that time, and then you've got shoe companies that are always wanting a piece of the action. And then athletes got contracts. They need to earn a living. So if they don't hit certain targets, then they're going to get cut. So all those are the kind of the nuances that when we get to a higher level. So your preparation needs to be good. Again, like I said, I'll probably go off on that one, it's the what ifs. But you've got to plan to fail and plan to succeed. I think I can mention it, but it's like Budapest. I think it was one of the best days that Canada's had in their athletic history on one particular time. Just the planning to succeed thing blew up, because you had people that all of a sudden getting medals that were due to go onto the podium, that you have to go through anti-doping before, and so you've got a lot of people, so the designated doctors, medical staff that were due to pick up maybe one or two of the initial ones, then we had another 2 or 3 other people behind them that was no one to pick up, and so that wasn't on a roster. So you've got to learn from that, you've got to plan to succeed as well. So hopefully that's been an important message for the management, the administration staff at Athletics Canada, so that we can allocate that at the back end of the team duties, so that you know who's going to look after which athlete if they do get a medal. Coaching excellence. We could have our day on this one, couldn't we, really? But empathy. For me, it's about what's between the 4 inches between one ear and the other. It's what makes them tick. For me, everything's about understanding, and that takes a little bit of time. That's why that long-term planning comes in as well. It takes a bit of a period. Normally, if you're good, you can get it done within a 6 month, but you normally want a year cycle just to really get under the skin of someone, figure out what makes them work. And it's that awareness. It's raising people's awareness for how they learn. For me, and I know that neuroscience and researchers is becoming a little bit more common. How do we learn? You know, coaching is, and a lot of people are using cues. Do cue this, cue that, and think about your toe up, dorsiflex your foot, do all of that stuff. But what we know that individuals learn in a different way, whether it be visual, audio, or kinesthetic. It's probably all 3 of those, but they learn at different rates, and some people will lend themselves a little bit more to visual. In that case, the biomechanical bits, we'll look at video footage and then get them to sit them down and take them through it so that they can actually learn that skill set better. So it's trying to pinpoint of where you get your maximum returns, and so that takes a bit of time as well. It's more time as a coach as well of of actually sort of like observing. He's being hands-on and spending more time with an individual so you can make the changes. As I said, there's a massive field there that we could go on. Leadership and primary role, but I think that on that one, just to close it, again going at the top level, the primary role, it's all right to win. We've got to let the athlete believe that they can win. That's the name of the game. So there's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes they say, oh, we want optimal performance. And obviously, that's the thing that you can only dictate. But there's no reason in saying, yeah, you know, what does it take to actually win this thing? So I think athletes at that level want to be the best. Well, hopefully they do. The rest will kind of like take care of itself. Team, and a little bit at the end here. That's athlete-coach relationship, clearly. Preaching the converted here, I'm sure. But everything's about the personal coach. Everything's got to drive the program. It's that inter-inking relationship. And it comes in lots of different forms. But you do, as in a crude comment, I'm going to make them, and you know, or I'm going to break them. I want someone to fix them. So you need to have a really good medical support staff. And I would call them, you know, we would have a physio that does a multitude of things. I don't like a lot of people around me. I like to filter out all these words. I don't like someone through the lens of one person when they're ganging up on you. That just closes it up for me. I like to listen to every single support staff and make my own decisions for me. But yeah, medically we need to get them on the track. We need times. The more time away from being injured or ill, the more times they can train. It gets that tight when we get to the world-class level. We can't afford to have more days off through being ill or whatever. So the summary is pretty much, oh, and I've got something else. It's you're in college programs, and it's a bit more geared at America, really, this one. System can produce the points, but not winners. A coach, athlete, and his team can. And you need to be ruthless, and it's all about percentages and balance to a program. So, on to a bit more of a practical bit. Now, this is a bit messy. I've bunged this one up. This is from 2003. Used it years ago. So the next day after the last day of the competition is the first day of the next cycle. So basically, the next day that you finish, you need to get on it. You need to start to think about what you're doing in the next year. You need to map out a plan. Won't go into the, Malcolm Arnold was a coach to John Ekipor and Chris, Colin Jackson, and I kind of learned from some of those older guys back in the UK. And it takes 10 years to become a world-class athlete, and that's not, you can add that thought process, but the reality you kind of break it down into yearly. But you need to look at a 4-year Olympic cycle as well. Sometimes we don't have, for me, in the past, I've not had people come with a 4 years to give or to development. Hopefully in the future, now that I'm in Canada, it's a little bit more of a bit more settled approach that maybe I can spend a little bit more time developing athletes. But by the time you don't have them for that, so what are you aiming for? It's Olympic cycles, it's Olympics. That's the be all and end all, and that only comes around once every 4 years. So getting onto this, because I don't want to spend a lot of time here. This just shows you the process. It's clever. This was pretty much done. We have lottery fund and you have cap, but to go to UK sport to get money, then you have to produce an annual plan. It's a good process to go through, and I'll go. This is the older version, as you can see. Oh, it's great. When I was a younger coach, not so much, but with Felix growing up, had to produce this. You had people that to justify getting their money, and it was great and it's good. But the reality of that is, and you just rip it up, change the dates, and bung a different date in for next year. It's a piece of paper, but it's good to go through. It's kind of, for me, I quite like doing that. This is a September period, and I'm going to show you another one that I kind of like to use now. But again, it's that 1 to 4 year planning really for me. But I challenge anyone to stick to an annual plan. Ultimately, we're always working back from the final main target. This is what I kind of use now, and I share this with each athlete. It has one of these, but as you can see, again, this was done in September. This has been updated, but it changes. I was interlinking with Felix and Heather, of trying to accommodate where I've got to go the colours really, haven't I? So mainly look, you've got, let me mark, and I'll do this, can't I? Brilliant. New tool for me. These yellow things, weekends obviously, major championship here, but hey, no point in thinking about that unless you qualify. So that's the main target of the year, always, for anybody within any country. Turn up at a national championship. And then work back. I won't go into this because it probably, if I do it here, then I'll skip through some of the stuff later. And the greens are for altitude, and these were just proposed dates. And there's lots of question marks of where training camps, preparation camp, warm weather training may be, or altitude training. We now know that we've got a 3-week spell. 3 weeks, is that enough for taking support staff to altitude? Of course it's not. We've got to be there for 4 or 5 weeks to get a real benefit, but we've got a 3-week window so we can go either side. We kind of spoken there, so we base it around where the competitions are. But at the beginning of September, we still wait. The Americans don't ever get their kind of shit together until December of where some of those races are. So until they're fixed, you can't get too thorough with this. But you've got to have a plan. You've got to sort of figure out roughly what you do, and then you adapt it. And I work in double mesocycles and then review with a midterm review. But the purpley ones are just, for me, you know, the testing, the datas, the reviews, all that, just making sure that I allocate for them. Yeah, it's good practice, reality check. I like to work in an athlete feedback 3 to 4 week spells. Realistically, you can keep athletes motivated and what are their targets, what have they learned, what are they missing. Let's get down to the nuts and bolts of a 3-4 week spell and just keep going along in smaller spells. I've written a fantastic annual plan, and I've had athletes that have been injured and have been a waste of time. So, you know, it's not realistic sometimes, but if it does, hey, great. Practical experiences, next phase really. What are the priorities for the individual and support team? These are, hang on, I've jumped a slide. Do apologise. Alright, so when someone new comes into my environment, what do I do initially? I need to know, I need data collecting. I establish baselines. Give me as much information as possible, especially if they're new. Tell me about them. Examine the physical characteristics of the athlete, identify physical strengths and developments with the medical and the strength conditioning staff. You know, put them on labs, get me data, lactate testing. Normally I want to get out onto the field so that it verifies what we've already been told in a lab. Clarify what the goals are, what the season. Sit down with the athletes and then just make sure, and then you share it with their goal paces and their date paces. Just because they want to run 3:31, they might not be in that shape, so you don't put 3:31 training in. That sounds obvious, but you know, some people have that mindset. I went to America and I spoke to, I just inherited about 20 odd people. Oh, what have you done? I said, yeah, I run 3:37. Oh, okay, so you go with the concept of those are the kind of sessions, okay, what they should be doing. So, well, what did you do last year? And it's like, 3:43. Well, you're not a 3:37 athlete then, are you? So it's like, you've got to take a step back on that. So you just overcook things and train too much. But yeah, write the monthly sort of like goals, sit down with them and share it. And train hard, continually adjust the volumes, intensities and the recovery. And a care and attention to read the room. There are athletes that I want to know everything, and there are athletes that don't want to know nothing. So you've got to read a room. And it's all about what makes them tick. You know, it's sort of like I said, I've said before, one size does not fit all. Now back on top. Prize one-to-one reviews. Sit and write the priorities. Again, repeating what some of the guys have already said really is get them to buy in. What are the lessons learned? What's worked well? What mistakes have been made over the last 12 months? Get the information so that you can make a calculated adjustment on what you need to do. It's about relationship building with a lot of the newer athletes, with the medical support staff. Do they fit in? Orientation, do you trust that person, do you not? Do they fit into the right environment? Who are they going to be working with? Athletes need answers, so the sooner you can get than working with them and then finding it out, and the more that you can move forward. Like the sports staff, what are the sports staff's expectations, skill sets and agendas? You know, I've got, this is what I want to do with my athlete, but if the sports staff's got, this is what I want to do, it ain't aligned, it ain't going to work. So you need to share information that will build trust. Warning of the data collection is that who's interpreting, you want to make sure that the right people interpret the data. That may sound obvious, but it's not always obvious over the years that I've been working. Question, midterm review. I have that time in the midterm review where it's like, are you assessed, are you on course or aren't you on course, so you can make the adjustments and changes at that point. But the world stage is continually changing, the standards are getting further and further up. Performance levels at elite level, the current, we're going, get down to the specifics really. Back in the old days, 331, when I was coaching Michael Lees for 2004 Olympics, you know, he had some skill sets, but I won't go into all the bits and bits, but he wasn't the greatest time trialer, but you knew that you had to run the time, and on that first sheet, I knew, and this was quite rare back then, in that he had run 3:34.9. So he wasn't comfortable. He was good at racing, but he wasn't so great at doing one-offs. So I had to prepare for that mindset. But if you are, for me, if I got him into 3:32 shape, he'd only run, I don't know, 3:36 or something at that particular time. If I could get him into 3:31, 32 shape, then I knew that he was in with a shout of medley possibly. Those were the El Garucci era, so it's tough. But it's the ability to cope with a 53, 54 second lap and clearing. It's knowing what the meters per second, what's your anaerobic speed reserves, getting all that kind of stuff. Having the ability to sprint at the end, but you can only do that if you're aerobically efficient. So it's all of that stuff comes into play a lot more. And for me, there's a nice little statement that I kind of use, which makes people think a little bit. But middle distance is all about the speed that you can run aerobically. And that's important. I've stuck with that one for quite a few years, and that kind of helps me, keeps me in check a little bit. So I continually ask the questions, and that continually changes. Requirements at elite level now, like I said, 31, 32 was, I might put you in shout with a medal. Now, lucky to get you in a final. Everything's sub 330, so you've got to readjust and change. So what's that going to take? If the performance levels of that athlete are 337 at that time, that's a big gap. What are you going to do, and how are you going to make the change, and how long does it take to make those changes? You can go in the lab, is it, I'm going to leave that one. Energy systems, I'll come to that in a little bit more, otherwise I'll just go off and know what I'm like. We'll move on. This is an important slide for me. Athlete profiling. Again, comes down to MSK is muscular screening, clinical testing. We're still data in and still going through that monotonous stuff, but it's still getting there. But for me, it's, as I said, we know everybody, it's understanding that each athlete is different, but it's putting the right body part into the right place. Spoken about hips, overstride, someone said about glutes, this, that and the other, but it's all about movement coordination. For me, it's getting that data of where it all kind of like fits in. It's how the body absorbs, recycles, and then propels. It's a foot on it, it's a rate of force development. There's a biomechanical aspect to that, but there's genetics to it. So everybody talks about foot contact being on and off the ground, but some people aren't made that way. Some people use their musculature and the muscles to actually be on the ground for longer. And that, if it's for them, that's important, or don't knock it, because you could end up producing a can of worms. Hence the reason why you need to have the right physiologists and the physios in play, is that they may have a perception of what they think is ideal, but that doesn't suit the individual characteristics that you particularly have at that time. So I'm into that, but I work on a 2-week cycle. I've messed around with it. It'd be great, wouldn't it, to do everything routine. We all love routine. Doing it in a week schedule, I just can't fit it all in a week. I try to go 3 weeks and do something different. I predominantly work on a 2-week cycle now, which I've kind of evolved in America, and get into the nuts and bolts. It's like Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Tuesday, Friday for the what I call running sessions. And for me, if you want to be a runner, you got to run. So that they're the workouts. The other stuff has to balance that. And I said before, they're all bridges and they're all important, but the percentages have to change. And the selecting of your strength conditioning coaches, don't give me, and that's veneer coaching, don't give me the program and just hand a strength conditioning program over to a strength conditioning coach. I haven't got a clue what the difference is between an 800 and a 10k runner. Anybody that can't write a strength conditioning program at the elite level, they're not an elite coach. I'll leave that one with you. I've got a chip on my shoulder about that one. And it's important that we educate and you've got good people that you're working with so they know what you're after in those sessions. The running sessions are still the things that are going to make you run quicker. Gym is important. What you do in it and how you do it, it's different. But you're not going to want to be pumping Olympic weights on a multiple time if you're running 120 mile a week as a 10k marathon runner. There's enough core stability going on in those guys. There's a lot of stress and fatigue going on and energy getting lost. We can't afford, energy is energy, whether it be physical or emotional or whatever. So we've got to take all of those factors into play. I'm not sure what else I need to say on that one without going at tangent. Coordinated movement skills and synchronisation is basically where I'm getting at. I rather that in my gym and the technical, you call them wickets. I call them SAQ mini hurdles. Anything that can enable someone to be more efficient is great. But like I said, horses for courses. This is a very scientific slide. We'll flick over this, but it just 1, 2, 3. This is energy systems. Just to bring it together, like I said, 2-week cycle, 5 sessions. There's 5 main components in my program. Other people can do it differently, but for me, I work on the energy systems, lactate threshold, VO2 max, and economy. Economy in the term of delivery of oxygen to the working muscle cells. But economy then goes into the physical characteristics demands, i.e. strength, power, speed, which is kind of done with the S&C guys and other people, and your skills drills and gym work. They all have to balance. They all have to be in the program for me, all the time, from day one. They're all in there, in that cycle. Intro phase, yeah, you know, you strengthen the musculoskeletal systems to prepare himself for a heavy load. But they're all in there straight away, but the percentages change. So clearly in winter, being crude, winter is all about lactate threshold, volume, aerobic development, but I'm always going to keep in touch with that speed. It might be through skills and drills, as I call it, or technical, or short hills, or something in the gym. But I'm tipping that and the anaerobic systems. And then it kind of shifts, again, depending on the event and the importance of each of the event groups that you're dealing with. But those percentages will change. So 3 energy, 2 physical for me. And I did put it, but he's already mentioned it, massive balance, science and art. I think I was very resistant in my early days of coaching. I didn't want to be a coach that this is what I did. These were my sessions. I run away from the sport of what I'd done, which was a bit naive because obviously it was quite a lot of valuable information. But I went very scientific and I went probably too far down the science route. Realised that, okay, that's not me. So you kind of then you start to blend and put your own personality on it. But yeah, these are the interlaying things, and this was done by a physiologist that I worked with at the British Olympic Association back in the early 2000s, and he put that together when he was trying to go for one of the jobs at UK Sport. Important here to just probably understand where physiology actually fits into the program. We're runners, it is critical. We spoke about double thresholds earlier, and yeah, but we got a lot be naive in that we did double thresholds, but we done double thresholds a lot more than we should have done. And it's getting that balance in that you've got to separate that and you've got to regenerate and recover. Make sure that when you do, or if you do, and when you do threshold, that they're effective, that you can regenerate and recover we've heard about Nate and that speed recovery. He can't do that all the time. But so what you might have to do, and it's like you've got to spread the time and the time scale, so rather than having 3 or 4 week blocks, you might have to take that out to 6 weeks so that you can get that quality of work that you want into the program. So there's a little bit more, hence the reason for urgency with the planning process. Get it done earlier so that you can, I hate that tight. Yes, you have to work on the skin of your teeth at the end of the day to change the program, be flexible with it, but it's so much nicer, isn't it, when you can just go with the flow and you've got time on your hands to actually do what you need to do. Very practical. This was of a guy that went, I don't know whether I mentioned my picture, this picture will come up in a minute, I know, but there's a couple of slides here, and this just shows you a practical, and I still use it, I'll pull it out because it's quite handy. This was where he was quite an anaerobic, he would always go too quick. We use 5 times a mile. Why 5 times a mile? It's just the fact that that's the decision me and my physiologist made back then days. So I did that with him and Haley Tullett, and that was what we did once a week and just got some data down. But with Michael, you'd always run far too fast in the first lap, and it's really very critical on what do? Do we stay there and he's producing lactate and the adaptation is not quite as quick? But you can short circuit time by actually just dropping, by changing things by running, I think, but rather than running 450 miles, we took him back to 454, and it's a second a lap. And it's that subtle that you can quench the intensity of the speeds, and that you can get fitter quicker, you can be more adaptive, you can get more quality of work done. And over time, as we saw from here, that the lactates went down. Still a little high, but that was. I would also try and stick in. I didn't do frozen dose that. I didn't do double. I was fitting too much into the program. I didn't do double thresholds back in them days with these guys, especially. However, I did stuff on Sunday. I did something over there. I did something over there, and I mixed and matched it. But so I got a quality of threshold working in the basic phase. But all we're just saying there is that it's blunted adaptation if you run with too higher lactates. And you're not recovering, so then you're not ready to do the next session. So the quality of those sessions get diminished. And I did it on the track. It's easier to control that 400, that monotony. So that was good for me. Just show you that. These are what a lot of people use now in the zones, and do they use 5? It's a lot too many 5 zones, and like 3 zones, zone 2 I think Mark had used. They're all good terminology that we've been using now. I'm not going to tell you anything different that you can't read or see, but the fundamental is how it fits into the practical program. Daily life. So we've got all this wonderful information and stuff, but and we've mentioned that. Said about it's not the 2 hours that they train, it's the 22 that they've done. But the monitoring process is what we do in the dark. You see, it comes out in the light. Are they doing what they need to do? That's the bottom line. So segment it. We're living in a high performance environment. I am now, and so you get them to train. Their biorhythms change in the 10 to 12, 4 to 6. It gives you that time to be a little bit more articulate. I know you guys are talking in practical terms. This is clearly not relevant to the audience, but this is, hopefully you'll have athletes that will be in years to come. But this is what happens at the sharp end, you know, make them prepare for that. You just get a bit more refined with the information. Yeah, nutrition, sleep, compression socks. How do you recover? How do you monitor? I'm using an Aura ring. Get the data. RR is the recovery rate. They use that on heart rate. If you don't have that, I personally use what I call rate of perceived effort. So I get a scale on a 1 to 10, and physiology will say that threshold is somewhere between that 6.5, 5 to 6.5. You need to get inside, as I said, what makes an athlete tick. What 5 is to one athlete and 6 is to the other. I've had athletes that, oh yeah, 5. And then you test them and you think that they're doing a threshold. Okay, they're doing a threshold. I've got heart rates on them, but I'm always, even when I've got data and I've got all this physiology kind of available to me, it's still kind of nice to get that perception of what they're actually feeling. And a lot of people get 4 or 5 and their lactates are like 4 or 5. They're clearly running too hard. So you've got to bring that rate of perceived effort down a little bit more to make sure that you hit the session that you want. I won't go into that anymore. Snapshot. Lecture in itself. Main headings for the athlete, really. It's collective ownership. And everybody's spoken about it. Okay, not for me. It's focus on what's important. But I think the thing that needs to be said here is it's no coincidence that the athletes that take control of their programs are the ones that generally are successful. Like I said, it's that genetic gene, talent making, the decision making process. They got to own it, and then they got to implement it. But they come in different guises. Observation. I could be around the place here. Observations with a big term, long-term planning. Now, 10-year planning makes a world-class athlete. You can't do everything. It's the program. Spoken about racing and race plans. You've got World Champs, Olympics, Pan Am, cross country, World Championship, indoors, major. You can't do everything. The world is so specialised now, and it's 0.5%, not 1%. You've got to get your planning right. You've got to rebuild. You've got to keep reloading. But when's the qualification period? Stuff that I know that Felix has been addressed. We've both been here. We've all had athletes that have had to chase times, and that's exhausting, and it's not the ideal process to go through. You've got to compromise if it's a young developing athlete. You've got a 4-year plan. It's the building blocks. If you can remember the previous slides, is that called mesocycles. It's sort of like winter, summer. There could be 8 mesocycles for an Olympics. I know that with one 800 girl that I've had, I only had it for 3 years, and so there's 6 major blocks, but we wanted to make sure that we really have the background I like to make sure that they have a good base and they're stronger and more robust, and then icing on the cake at the last moment. So it was taken that you might spend 5 of those mesocycles really kind of developing aerobic qualities and aerobic development, and only at the last moment in the last cycle or mesocycle you'd really hit the screw and then go from there. And it's a bit like the physiological testing. Is we know that there's threshold lactate threshold, VO2 max in the economy. You get the lab test and long-term development. All of a sudden, a lot of people's VO2. People may perceive that VO2 it's nice if you've got a nice one, but a lot of that can be genetic. So if you have a lower VO2 max, does that make that a determining factor of whether you can run on elite scale? Depends really, because you have an aerobic cycle of the thirds. You've got all those 3 elements. But if the economy is good and they're running at 85% of their max, you've got a big ceiling there to really hit in. And so focus on economy. You might delay VO2 max. I know I want to always have little elements of everything into my plan, but the VO2 max and some of the other elements can be just pushed to one side, because if economy is the thing that we can focus on and we can get a good return, hit it. And so you might spend, if people want to run the indoor, I've just got to compromise. You have to keep compromising for long-term development. So there's a bit of an argument, a little bit on the word compromise, what those words actually mean. And it's the same with dynamic strength development. Steeplechasers, we have some people that are dynamically efficient, other people that are physically strong but are injury risk and are hypermobile ankles and can't really do a lot of dynamic work, so you do more isometric work. So it's making choices, but if that's the component that we need to do, then you've got to spend time, and it may not be that it's for 4 years. It may mean that you have a 6 weeks, 8 week window in the winter spell to really focus on doing some of that strength development program in that area. I'd rather have someone done, I don't know, let's say it was the glutes that they were spoken earlier. If you want to do core areas and pelvic stability, and I've got to think about the glutes, it's all related to the pelvis area of how that moves. But if that's what needs to be done, then I'd probably focus a little bit more on there, and then probably soften the training and compromise some of the training to just get into the gym and hit that, because I can hit the running sessions a little bit further down the right. I'll bounce around a bit. Long-term planning, I think there's another thing that needs to be said. It's long distance, it's getting shafted when you're starting to look at the planning component. Steeplechase, 10Ks, IDLF, they're not putting them into the Diamond Leagues, and so opportunities of where they fit, we have to. That's why you need to look in September and start to look at where the opportunities are to run those. We're also dealing with world ranking points now, and there's going to be where there might be 25% of entry would be in a qualifying time and 75% qualifying time, 25 world ranking. It's shifted, and so you're going to find that World Athletics is probably going to say 75% is going to be world ranking and 25 will be standards, and then standards are going to be higher. So that needs to come into the long-term planning process, especially when we're talking about the fall period. But you reassess in the end of I do what I call hot training up until February, at the end of February, and then I review and do my midterm review. Am I on course or aren't I on course of what I want to do? And then really I'm going to refine the programme. Got 5 minutes. Oh, I'm like Mark, I've got 2 minutes. What else have I got? Development athletes, I said, if it's a bit like development 400 metre runners, they're not going to retain aerobic condition as much, and so you need a longer period of time, just like I said about Nate, in that you might have longer periods in your development stages, because as soon as you've reached a capacity, it's gone, and it's harder to get it back for 400 and a developing. People cross countries championships, where the qualifying or where the selection standards are, or where you put those races to qualify. The younger under 20 athlete, talking a little bit out of turn, but they're going to lose their capabilities sooner, so it's harder to get it back before then going to a major champ. Same thing for a 400 metre runner basically, and you can't ever be strong enough. You've got to be robust to run 3 rounds if you're an 800 metre runner, most of the main events now. Race plan 2, world champs has been spoken about, BMC model, 5 to 7 races. What's the ideal model? Figure it out with your own athletes. If you haven't got the races because you can't get in them, there's only so many lanes, then time trials come into play. But plot them in. Type of athlete I said about that. Can you gamble? We've said that before. Nick Simmons, we took a gamble in 2013, which is dangerous to do in America because there's a big standard and they take the first 3. But we took the gamble of not being completely right. It was about a 7-week period before then Moscow, which is the year after the Olympics. And so we took a little longer. We took the gamble in that he was good enough shape that he would end up running. Funny enough, he did run under 144. He came third in that particular trial. Went on to get the silver medal in Moscow. So, hey, we got that one right, but hey, don't always get it right, do we? But you have to earn selection. You can't run in the major champs if you're not in it. So that's the other thing. Injured athletes, short period of time, only got 6 weeks to the championships. What do you do? For me, keeping it simple, intensity, volume, recovery. There's 3 different type of weeks there. You might have to balance that and then work back from that champs. You've got short spells. You can't just get aerobic conditioning done there, but you can mix the sessions. We've come from I know the 3 of us do probably mixed sessions of different changes of pace, 10K, threshold, and then down the bottom. But when you get in right to the nitty gritty of the championships, you might go half threshold to keep the aerobic stimulus if you've had someone injured, and you may go full-blooded specific session, say 1500 type of athlete might want to get. He might do 3, 4, 800s, but you might do only 2 of them bloody hard because you need to get that stimulus in there. So getting that balance and then spreading out the recovery rate so that they can regenerate from it. And I think it's the female. This is a massive area. This is a talking point in its own. It's how we accommodate training loads and volumes around the 4 cycles. There's more and more studies coming out. Obviously, females are different to males. Yes. That's obvious. These are fundamental differences from physiology to psychology, but it's been misunderstood for years and decades. I've been in that position many years, but now we have more and more data. But just to get to the point, I manipulate and train training programs on a 4-week cycle, depending on who, what, and where, and I'm not going to talk too much. That was the Michael East one through that he had qualified and run 32 about, what was that, about 6-7 weeks before the championship. So that was, I was going to take him through. But basically the main thing, reload, emphasise 5k when he had done the qualifier, and then run low under this. He's a 1500 metre runner, so go and race 800s, doesn't take so much out of the system, it's quality training, but then go to train at 5k. So we were hitting both extremes. I conned the selectors and said, oh, he was going to double, so I got him to run an 800 in the Nationals, but he'd already qualified for the 50. But that suited my purpose. And so train high, race low, and then always be ready 2 weeks out. So a lot of people, you know, these are these lovely things here. Again, people might say, oh, I won't go into that now, but this is like a very theoretical, oh, this one's different, but you get 3 loads in 1 week, got a 4-week cycle where you might go 80, or sort of 90, 100%, and then, or 80, 90, 100, and then 60 load, up and down. Well, you don't get that because you've got to figure out where the races are. You know, we don't, the races, oh, well, my cycle's in there, I want a low key there, and I want a key race there. That doesn't exist. We're dominated by, hey, that's where the race is, you've got to work around it and develop it accordingly. Again, flicking through that one. And this is just the recap of a female thing, really. It's phase 1, 2, 3. There are different variations. So I'll get to the nuts and bolts. So I think it's a worthwhile misunderstood that when you're in phase 1, we've got to cut the volume. Hydration is important. Understand where the cycles exist, etc., etc. And then we're getting in. You can actually increase the load, and then in phase 3 here, this is where we can really hit the aerobic systems. You know, this is how fine-tuned you've got to get at the top level. And then you may get athletes in phase 4 that have symptoms as though, or have symptoms as though they're in phase 1, but they come a bit earlier. But that can be done with effective monitoring and having the right people in play. Just wanted to whack that UK sport. This is 10 years to make an athlete. You may have seen that. I'll share that. I know I'm short time. Again, another one just to put up, just to leave with you. We're all in. Most of the time you guys are probably in these areas here. You know, obviously the talent's always recognisable. Then there's the discipline of, you know, putting in the hours, and then the third one is the opportunity. You come to your colleges, starting to get picked up with the right people, getting selected for different stuff. Now this is where myself, where fitness has been in, but this is where we're getting at the top end. Like I said, the 1% where the uncomfortable bit is. There's an obsessive drive, and just a quick story on that bit is very much that using a javelin throw, I suppose, is if you teach a technique well to a world-class, a talented individual, they'll pick it up and run with it and make it even better. But if you teach them a poor technique, because of their skill set, they'll pick it up and run with it and make it even worse. So what you do and how you do it is critical. So don't start teaching things that you don't know nothing about, because those athletes are better. They take us to stuff where we don't know. So people are saying we've got to get the athlete on board with it, of understanding that it's their program, and they're teaching us, not the other way around. They define medical. I hear medical. Oh, they've got this hamstring. They've got this, that, and the other. I have seen over the years numerous athletes define medical conditions. They're a different breed. They're not normal. And we don't want to be normal because we want to win medals. Well, there. Mistakes. Guys have spoken about this one. I'm not going to go in here too much, really. But it's just where the people make most mistakes are after they've been on the championships. It's like what they do then. It's the regeneration, the adaptation. It's that month out. You've got to take it, having the confidence to just take a week off after a national if you're preparing for a major champ. It's about timing, everything's about timing, but how much time do you have? The things that you have to regenerate, it's mentally still exhausting, it's more mental than physical the majority of the time for athletes. The adaptation to acclimatise, you've got to travel east. that's where a lot of people are making mistakes and how they travel. Are they preparing for the time zones in advance? They should do it the weeks before. Are you running at 9:30 in the morning at major champs? Well, prepare that weeks before. It's always, you can do lots of basic common sense stuff as long as you know what you're trying to do. But training, I've got travel, altitude and heat, that's been spoken about. But you need to figure out, well, how long it takes to actually do one, what's the most important and how you're going to prepare. We've got like 5 weeks, I think it is, after the Nationals this year. So it's doable, the altitude is doable. But how many races are you going to diamond leagues? How many races do you need? A lot of the mistakes that people make are when they get to the, and I'm going to flick through that one because I'm talking about it, people overtrain at the holding camp. They come off, they get to the other side of a preparation camp, and they get on with training, full training straight away. It's like, hang on a minute, there's the body adaptation. You've not only got your body clock, but you've also got the sort of like the physiological aspects of it. So it takes a bit of time. You've got to be a bit more astute with what you do and how you do it. Yeah, the altitude thing, I think San Moritz is on the cards for people who want to go after the Nationals. But if you've never been before, don't think about going then. Do it in April. Do it before. Don't start messing around before you get to that. Another common mistake. People go to these camps because they're not done. But the big things that you kind of have is that it's, and I'm spitting it out, I'm conscious of time here guys, but it's like, it's all the things you don't know. It's like boredom, you know, distractions. People are used to it. They go to a camp, they've got time on hands, overeating. All these little things can make the major differences when you get onto the world stage. And the other thing, reportage. We've got reportage coming in this year. So that people will all have 2 races. You're going to get 2 races. No small queues. It's a cutthroat business. You don't qualify, you don't qualify. You can have another run and then try and qualify, but that's not going to be effective for you actually winning medals. So deal with that. Sorry, spit now. I'm going to flick through some of these next ones. That just shows you the basis of how you use altitude on a periodisation. This might be April, you go up, you come down and race, you do it, and then you go back and you go up, so you can use it as part of your cycle. That's quite nice in theory, but I actually have used that with athletes before. Top-ups, buffering systems, we've spoken about that 14-day week, how many days it actually takes to adapt to anything. Difference between heat and altitude, which is your best one, what's your priority? Do I go altitude or do I go to the warm weather? Both have their benefits, both have advantages. Plasma with the heat, hemoglobin content with the altitude. But it takes time. What are the times? We know that it takes 10 to 40 days. Do we have time to do heat acclimatization? Or you know, is that better? We're not in Budapest, but we've got Paris. It's not as hot, but it's humid. So you've got to put those things into equation. Kind of like the idea of going altitude and then going to heat, but some people may just want to go straight through and do altitude. But I think that's only for the extreme, the real icing on the cake guys that have done it before that are pretty thorough. I quite like to go altitude and heat. Never done it with any of my athletes before. It'd be quite nice to do it. And these are just the nitbits of what I mentioned of be prepared for the travel. Compression socks, what you eat, what you drink, how you do it, how you get on a plane, sleeping and rest, change your body clock straight away or before, be in preparation weeks in advance, especially if you know you've qualified. By that point you should know. And especially if you've gone to championships, tick off the box with the medic so you get a clean bill of health. Have you done your blood profile 6 weeks before so that if there's any issues with your ferritin, that can be addressed? You can't address it in the last week, 2 weeks, even 3 weeks. You need a good spell at it. My granddaughter carried my bags for me. So, hopefully she picks me up and takes me where I need to go. Takes me to the golf club. Holding camp, I've already said about that. Again, goes from time trialing, do your homework. Yeah, how much time? I'm out of time, ain't I can answer these in questions another time. I'm happy to, over a pint. What have I got there? Time zones, I've probably quickly fixed. Coach being in control of the paces, holding camp. To see that all the time, coaches do